Okay, Jasmine, figure about 10 seconds. Hi, I'm Dan Sweet. I'm Director of Public Relations and Communications for Helicopter Association International, and welcome to this week's At Work webinar. We are glad you joined us. We know that everybody's got a really busy schedule. HAI takes safety incredibly seriously. It's one of the three legs that we really always continually try to support and try to develop. It's been about 3 years ago now that we did a member survey. We were asking our members where they felt like we could give them a big hand. And one of the topics that survey was regarding SMS programs. We know that there's plenty of discussion flying that the FAA is going to mandate SMS programs for operators. That's not come around yet. But about almost 2 years ago, Chris Hill, our Director of Safety, who's also one of our panelists today, started developing an SMS partnership program. And we came together with some great providers to offer SMS programs that are scalable to our operator members. And since then, we've started to expand it. And so we felt like now is a great time to discuss what more this program has to offer to our members. And so let's jump right into things and get started. First of all, let me find where my cursor is. I'm going to advance slides. That's not it. There we go. Our host today is going to be Chris Hill. He's our Senior Director of Safety here at HAI. He is a veteran helicopter pilot and an operational safety expert who is flying with the U.S. Army and the U.S. Coast Guard and operators in the, sorry, I got to minimize some things here. U.S. Coast Guard and operators in the oil and gas sector in the Gulf of Mexico. Our next speaker today is going to be Mike Renz. He is the president of Anlar Corporation. He is a dual-rated pilot and A&P mechanic. He holds licenses in the U.S. and Canada. An operator in the New York City area, Anlar puts considerable focus on safety, which credits for 40 accident and incident-free years. Chris Batt is the Director of Safety at Air Center Helicopters and a retired U.S. Army AH-64 standardization pilot with 31 years of active duty service. Chris joined Fluor Corporation in Bagram, Afghanistan as the company's aviation services program manager for the U.S. Army LOGCAP mission, and he joined Air Center in 2017. Rick Christofferson is the senior safety consultant with WYVERN. He is a retired U.S. Coast Guard pilot and safety officer with 20-plus years experience in managing flight and safety programs and supporting others with the development of SMS programs. And finally, today we've got quite a panel. Sonnie Bates comes back to us. He's the CEO of WYVERN. He began his career as a U.S. Air Force pilot, during which time he held several key leadership roles, including quality assurance evaluator, safety program manager, and director of operations. He has also served as the COO of Baldwin Safety and Compliance. Our webinars are interactive. If this is your first webinar, we welcome you. We encourage you to ask questions, particularly when it comes to SMS. This is something that, again, we feel is just like a really vital program. To do that, we ask that you use the question module that's part of the Zoom webinar program. There's a chat function. We encourage you to use that as well. But we're going to take the questions for the end of the Q&A session that comes at the end of the program from that question module. So please use that as best you can. We certainly encourage it. This webinar is also being recorded. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance to see it regardless of what time zone you're working in. And so we will try to make that recording available as soon as possible. I believe we'll probably try to get it up posted tomorrow onto our webinar page on rotor.org and on our YouTube channel, but sometimes it can take a little bit longer, and so it could be as late as Monday. So with that, let me stop sharing my screen and invite Chris Hill to join us to begin the webinar. Chris?
Hey, thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate the handoff. Lots of great folks we look forward to having today. And good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all of you who are joining us here today. The fact that you're listening in means you've got some level of interest in SMS and how you might be able to implement or improve your SMS in your operation. So thank you for that interest. Leaning into it ahead of the wave is always a smart thing to do. And we've got some folks on here who are experts in either helping people implement the SMS or actually the ones who are implementing it in real live operations today. So not just a commercial for you today, but real life experiences of folks who can explain the virtues of why SMS is such a critical thing to implement in your day-to-day operations. So with that, you got a brief little sneak peek at some of our folks that are going to be with us today. I'd like to ask Mike Renz just to come on real quick. Just explain a little bit more about who you are and your company and what type of operations you do. Mike, welcome.
Yeah, hi, sure. Thanks for having me. So Analar Corporation actually started way back in 1978. I was not part of the company at that point, but I was actually a mechanic for a major MRO facility up in Spring Valley, New York. And the Analar name comes from an old Latin term that means wingless flight. And it was the corporate flight department for the Arm & Hammer Baking Soda Company, which everybody knows that brand. It's actually the Church and Dwight brand. And then shortly after, I had joined the company as a mechanic and then worked my way up to actually director of aviation for the company. We operated airplanes and helicopters. I was also a pilot, but I was also director of maintenance and director of ops. In 1995, I actually purchased the company after the company experiencing some hardships and looking to get rid of the flight department. I actually stepped up and I bought the company in 1995 and continued on ever since. We've held a Part 135 certificate since 1978, which is quite a remarkable time for us. Within that time, when I purchased actually Analar, I also started to develop operations in the Bahamas.
All right, looks like we had a temporary loss of signal from Mike. So hopefully we'll be able to get him to rejoin us. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and ask Chris Batt with Air Center Helicopters. Go ahead and share a little bit about your company. You do some interesting stuff over there at Air Center.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, we're based out of Fort Worth, Texas. We're a Part 135, 141, and 145 operation. 28 aircraft. Main airframe is the H-225. We have about 280 employees and currently operating contracts with NASA, Boeing, SpaceX, USA Africom, the Navy, the Air Force, and the National Science Foundation. And I see that Mike's back. So that's Air Center Helicopters.
So sorry. Yeah, I had a little minor glitch here. So anyway, should I continue or?
Any final thoughts you might have, feel free to continue, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, so we've always had an SMS program within our organization, but it was vital for us to sort of have an outside source be sort of like a coach to us, and WYVERN brings that. We've enjoyed so much success in the small time that we've had the WYVERN program with the FRATS, the flight risk assessment program, being able to upload any problems we have within the company. So safety has always been our number one goal, and we carry that over not only from the flight standard side but on the maintenance side and everything we do in-house. And we're really looking forward to working further with the WYVERN program.
All right, thanks a lot for that. And Mike, we'll go ahead and continue with Chris. make sure we didn't cut you off on any thoughts, particularly with your experience so far with SMS.
When I came into the company in 2017, we had about 7 aircraft and about 50 folks. We had a manual that nobody read, and everything was operated with Dropbox and email. And we did not have a system. It was all output from the safety office. So when the beauty of the current program with WYVERN is it's a system. It's output from the safety office and input from the field. It's operational 24/7. It doesn't depend on me answering my email or putting something in Dropbox. It's a reporting system. And one of the important things is once you start going to the FAA system is you have to have a system for confidential or anonymous reporting, and that's part of the system. So people, if they feel they need to report confidentially or anonymously, the system allows them to do that. Once somebody reports an incident or whatever they want to report, it's logged in, it's categorized. They receive an email that their report has been received. So what this does is the employees buy into the system. So instead of me trying to feed people, they are active participants, and that is really the key to a successful SMS program.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. Looking forward to talking to you a little bit more with some questions on the panel. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on. I'll ask Rick Christopherson to join us on the screen here. Just to give it a quick little background, Rick and I worked in the Army and in the Coast Guard, and then Rick went off and did lots of interesting things, including some audit work with some folks, and that's why he's here with us today. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with WYVERN and with ANILAR recently?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Chris, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I recently joined the WYVERN team as a senior safety consultant and had the opportunity to work with Mike's team, particularly his safety officer, Such, is the gentleman's nickname. And we had a very engaged period of time where for 2 weeks we went through the assessment program, which really, from my perspective, serves as a superb gap analysis, if you would, because we were able to take a look at where they were in their program, use the assessment checklists, and determine exactly where their strengths were and areas that they needed to continue to work on. And it really helped me work with Such one-on-one, peeling back their program. And at the end of the day, during part of it, Such was feeling like he was up against the ropes, because I was asking him a lot of questions and stuff, and he really started to feel like, oh, this is, feeling like I'm going to get a bad report card. And, I tried to, calm him down on all of that and just let him know that it's like, look, it's not a report card. It's an opportunity for me to be able to, as that third party, look at your program and assess where you are, and give you, an idea at the end of the day, like where your strengths are and where you have room for improvement. And I think when we outbriefed with Mike, he was very pleased with the end result, because as he indicated, they were using the WYVERN program, and they were already collecting some really superb data from their flight risk assessments, their FRATs that they were using. And I was able to pull that data and look at it and really begin to highlight for them, hey, here's some things your safety committee might want to start taking a look at. You've got some great indicators in here already. So it was just a really good, solid opportunity for me to work with Such, and then at the end of the day, in the outbrief, give Mike a real solid understanding of where his program was and where they need to keep working towards. Thank you.
Excellent, Rick. Thanks for that background. Appreciate that. I'm looking forward to exploring some of that a little bit more in a moment. So we'll go ahead and have you sign off just briefly, and then I'm just going to say a few words before I introduce our next panelist. So for many of you who are tuned in today, you may have a pretty mature SMS program, or you might not even have a clue on where you'd like to start. So we understand that this runs the gamut from very mature operators to folks just in the beginning to enter the game. So a lot of the feedback that Dan referred to in the beginning of the intro of this webinar was we wanted to be able to be that source to provide a wide range of products and services for SMS and anything related to somebody's safety programs. What we already had in place that was in like an audit type program, we were partnered and we remain partnered happily with the International Business Aviation Council, and they have the ISBAO program, and it is what we would like to characterize a program for those people who really have a very mature program, and we call it playing in the varsity. And some of the feedback we had from some of our smaller, less mature operators that was just a bridge too far, and it was discouraging people from dipping their toe into even the SMS pool. So we wanted to provide a foundational capability service that would give people that jumpstart just getting into setting up their safety programs, risk management, all the elements that you typically know of for safety management systems, and then give them something that they can use in a more collaborative manner, a one-on-one conversation with folks, either through initial conversations and actual virtual audit. And then we found that WYVERN already had something like this in place. They've been using their evaluation program for SMS for 5 years prior to our partnership that we just started. So I'll go ahead and ask Sonnie Bates to join me on the screen, CEO of WYVERN. And I'm going to hand it off to him and have him talk a little bit more about this program, its rich history, and how we envision bringing that program to our members into the future. Sonnie, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Chris, and thanks to everyone joining us today. And Chris, I really appreciate you giving that intro, kind of setting the stage, because it takes me back to when I was working with HAI in a previous job with the International Business Aviation Council, which, as you say, there's a partnership still there today. But while I was there in that role, trying to get more helicopter operators and even any operators to come on board to the idea of SMS, they still looked at it as, well, I'm not ready for that A to Z, really robust, like enterprise level, what I call legacy audit experience. They're like, wow, I look at these checklists, it's like 400 or so element items. I think it's going to take me at least a year to prepare for this. This is going to be very stressful. And even back then, this has been over 10 years ago, we started talking about, why don't we just look at the SMS first, get people into professional safety risk management, and then build on that, and then they can build out their systems, their policies, process, procedures, programs. And then one day when they're ready, they can do that more legacy oriented, what I say, full system audit that has loads and loads of protocol items that are meaningful nonetheless. But, it's almost like pilot training. If you try to learn everything about an aircraft when you go into initial pilot training, you'll probably learn nothing, because it's just overload. You need to learn just enough to be safe and effective and proficient and competent to get out there into the system. And over time, you develop into a more mature and competent aviator. So that's what we did here with this program. We approached HAI some time ago and said, hey, look, when I showed up at WYVERN a little over 5 years ago, I brought this idea to WYVERN and said, let's offer an SMS only option. Let's help people that are not ready yet for a full system audit. And so for over 5 years, we've been using highly experienced auditors and coaches to use protocols that are developed by the Safety Management International Collaboration Group. If you're not familiar with them, this is a group, a formal group that takes all the ICAO information and with regard to safety management, and they say, let's build some tools and for the world to use free of charge. And you can find those tools on skybrary.aero or WYVERN's website, www.wyvernltd.com. And so these protocols are built by the FAA, Transport Canada, EASA, and they're right size. There's about 73 element items or so, something like that, in the SMS. And so that's what we use and I have been using for over 5 years to evaluate operators' SMS. And we found that this is a very very good size, very good effort for an early stage operator, or really any operator that wants to deep dive into their SMS. You know, a lot of even mature operators with a very effective SMS say, you know, I would like somebody to visit just to look at my SMS only, and we use these protocols. But one of the things I believe in is what you do is important, but how you do it's more important. And so how we do this is using really expert people like Rick Christopherson, who you met just a little while ago, and other industry experts that understand this, the system, the industry, the kind of operations that you're conducting in the industry. And they, just like Rick said so well earlier when he was doing his intro, it's not an audit. It's an evaluation, and it's that opportunity, as Rick said, to find your strengths and find your weaknesses or opportunities for improvement. At the end, you still receive an evaluation. It's very friendly. We'll identify you as a level 1 through 4. Level 1 is, hey, you have everything in place, but it's not really yet working. Level 2 is, hey, look, your safety risk management processes and program is working. Level 3, your assurance is working, and level 4, everything's working effectively. The nice thing about this too is everything is all done very efficiently and time compressed. If an operator signs up for an SMS evaluation, the actual event is a one-day event through virtual means. Prepping for the event is as needed, but it could be as much as or little as a one-day prep if they're really ready for it. But that's up to the coach or the evaluator and the operator. But so it's less time. You're going to save money. It's 60 to 70% less cost than a full system audit. So you're saving loads of money that way, and you're focusing on what's really important, which is professional safety risk management. And finally, I'd like to add that when we're looking forward, conducting these evaluations, we also include a safety culture analysis. So you could get some kind of idea what your safety culture is like. Again, this tool, this set of tools is based off the Safety Management International Collaboration Group's model, which is based off the James Friesen model. And the questions are valid. And the reliability is there with the tool to give the consistent results time after time again. So you can look and see if you're improving or not over time. So that's pretty much it. I took a bit of time there to explain what the program is. But I think I'll go ahead and come back to you, Chris. And if anybody wants to ask questions or if you want to introduce the panelists.
Thanks for that, Sonnie. That was a very good brief description of the program. There's certainly a lot more to unpack here, and that's why we have our panel with us today. So I'll invite all of them to join us on the screen here. You can turn on your camera, and then when you're ready to chat, we can unmute, and then we'll get right to it. So I'll start out. Mike, you were one of the first folks to take a dabble in this program, but even though it's been in place for 5 years with WYVERN, you're the first folks to test drive HAI's partnership program with this newly structured checklist, working with Rick and some of the folks that we've already talked about. Can you tell us a little bit about, not only that, but just the positive impact SMS in general has had on Analar? And then any experience you'd like to share about that with Rick?
Yeah, well, yes, thanks. So yeah, it's been a huge impact on our operations. And I will add that I have lots and lots of experience with SMS programs because I was one of the safety auditors, worldwide safety auditors for the Amaretta Hess, the oil company here, headquartered in New Jersey. And I would travel around. Hess did not own any of their own aircraft. They would use PHI, Bristow, ERA, all these companies, in the North Sea, Gulf of Mexico, over in Bada, which is Equatorial Guinea in Africa. We've traveled all over, and we've actually conducted safety audits for that company. So I've learned a lot over the years just from the auditing side and understanding how other people engaged with the SMS programs. I mean, some of the bigger companies, they have signs up in the hangar, 365 days without an incident. I never want to have that hanging in my hangar. So, but anyway, it just goes to show you that, the time and effort that these companies put in to safety, it really, rubbed off on me. And, we're a 42, 43-year-old company. I haven't owned it for that long, but, it's just so important for us to, and not only from the flight aspect of it, but from the maintenance side. Because we maintain, outside of our own 10 aircraft, we maintain about 30, 35 aircraft through our MRO, which is a Part 145 service center. So we have a lot of interaction with other different companies, and it's just so important. And having that coach available to us and have somebody, to go to for guidance. And, we thought that we had a really good program. But, when you start thinking about it, how do we even know that it's effective? I mean, it's operational, but how effective is it within our company? And having, the WYVERN team to help us with that, I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's what we need as a company.
Well, I appreciate you saying that last part in particular there, Mike. Having a leader having the humility to acknowledge that you may not have figured it all out. That somebody who thinks they've got it all solved right out the gate is probably missing a few key ingredients, important things. And only until a third set of eyes can come in, and it's not to rip you apart, but it's help you get another perspective of your operations. So I appreciate you sharing that. Rick, I want to point to you real quick. So you talked a little bit about that experience. I know that this program has been in place for like 5 years, predominantly for charter, fixed wing operators, that sort of thing. So, what's the difference? I'll ask you first, Rick. But why do we need to have a special program just for helicopter folks? Are we that different of a breed? What are your thoughts and what's your experience? Any other things that you could share with the folks who are viewing today?
Sure. Well, you are absolutely correct. We are a different breed. We rarely take off from a paved runway environment and work in that kind of arena. Helicopter operations are very unique, very challenging, and as a result, we end up, finding ourselves in very unique operational environments. So. One of the things that I think that's really advantageous for small operators, particularly with this program, is to take advantage of this SMS assessment program to start to kind of get a good sense of their current state. You could use this to essentially figure out where are we today, and use it as a baseline assessment, and then where do we need to grow to really, yield the best return on that investment.
Yeah, that's a good point you make. When Sonnie introduced a moment ago, he talked about this being a one-day audit, whether it's an actual 1 day or spread out over a couple, 3 days, a 1 day's time worth of effort. When some people listening right now hear that, they must think there's no way that we can do that. Sonnie did indicate if you're ready, a big qualifier, but it's not intended to get you from, zero to hero in one event. You're giving them an assessment of where they are. So Sonnie, talk about that just very briefly. What can they expect as an outcome for a very, early adopter, not as mature operator? What can they expect in terms of completion and how much is left to do after the assessment?
Yeah, I think thanks for that, because as soon as I said that, if they're ready, I thought, well, in most cases you should just get a look at how you are. So the part about getting ready is, are your manuals ready for the evaluator to look at? Or is your system, if you're using some kind of system, and hopefully you are, ready for the evaluator to look at? So there's some administrative pre-evaluation steps that need to take place, but getting ready for an evaluation is really not what this is all about. That's the administrative steps that I just spoke of. But once the evaluator have all these things at their avail and they can review them and to develop some kind of understanding structurally where the operator is, then it becomes a conversation about, okay, let's dig into this. How do you really do this? And how do you really do that? And how are you identifying hazards and risks? And what are your goals really? What are your objectives? And they try to align this with some kind of what they would consider operational logic in the industry. A lot of safety managers find themselves working in like a vacuum, and they're just trying to make some kind of third party happy to get a certificate. And that's doing them no good at all. They really need to look at their operation and say, look, this is the environment. Like Rick said, you're rarely landing on pavement, maybe, right? And so this is our environment. These are our objectives to improve safety operationally. Let's keep our eye on the ball. This is not an administrative exercise whatsoever. It's an operational exercise. It just happens to be documented. It needs to be documented and communicated. Like Chris said, you know, when that information comes in, then it automatically goes to the person that submitted the information, and then they all get automatic updates. The management is reviewing it and taking action to make, you know, their operational environment a better place. So yeah, it's going to take time for an operator that's at 0 to get up to level 4, a number of years even. That's okay. You have to start somewhere. So that's what the value is here. It's not a report card, so to speak, of a pass or a fail. It's just feedback on where you are, and that's where the coaching comes in. You know, and that's WYVERN's way. Like I said, what you do is important. How you do is more important. WYVERN stands by our promise that we are always available. We are your wingman. We answer the phone, and that doesn't cost you a dime. You know, we'll talk with you. We'll help with you. Get to where you need to go, and it's not just me, it's my full team. Of course, we have projects that we work on when operators want a project, but that's just how we operate. That's how we roll.
All right, thanks for that, Sonnie. Chris, before I get to you, I'm just going to summarize one thing that HAI did a couple of years ago, probably a little bit more than 2 years ago. We partnered with Air Charter Safety Foundation, Baldwin, Aircraft Electronics Association, and WYVERN to roll out SMS software support capabilities, which includes this level of coaching that Sonnie was talking about, in addition to implementing a software to help people go from beyond spreadsheets and paper napkins and, you know, PowerPoints to have a little bit more easy, repeatable process. And Chris, you got on board with WYVERN's QSMS program a while back. And how would you differentiate what that program is compared to what this evaluation program is? And, you know, which should somebody do first in your mind? Are they equally important or valuable to you, just from your perspective as an operator?
Well, interestingly, our first outside audit was in Bagram, Afghanistan, underfloor, but it was by WYVERN. So WYVERN sent 2 auditors out, sat down with us for a week in Bagram. And at the end of that, left us with 4 pages of notes. And again, it was coach, teach, mentor. They didn't say they said we were a safe operation, but hey, here's how you can improve yourself. So we still have those to date. So using that information, we decided instead of just a safety manual, we need to write an SMS manual. So we wrote our SMS manual off of those sheets. And we just recently updated it with the Part 5 FAA gap analysis. But between those 2 documents, we feel we have a very solid manual. And then having the WYVERN audit from the floor days, we decided we're growing too fast to do this manually. We need a professionally managed system, and which is why we adopted the QSMS. And I'd like to thank Chris Stewart and her team. They've available anytime we need them. They have tailored our online system to what we need, taken some things out, added for us. And I really feel if we didn't have this responsive system, we would not be able to wrap our hands out of 280 employees, 28 aircraft, and every place that we operate. So I would recommend an audit first to see where you stand. And then if you decide that you need management for a larger program, I would certainly recommend the QSMS.
All right, thanks for that. So I'm just going to quick reminder to everybody listening in. I'm sure we're doing a bang up job getting a few answers to questions you already had. But if there's something we're missing, take advantage of this opportunity. Type into the Q&A and get your questions going. I'll go ahead and continue, and I'll ask all of our operators and Rick to just join us and just stay up so we can have kind of a free-flowing conversation wherever this takes us. And I'll go ahead and give Sonnie a head start on this. So, you know, I've I've slipped and said audit when I meant to say assessment, and you use the term SMS evaluation. We use the term assessment. Audits, assessments, evaluations, inspection. Help us navigate what's what there, Sonnie. You know, what's the difference?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so about 2011, I went on staff with the International Business Aviation Council and quickly found myself traveling around the world, responsible to teach auditors. And I'm like, wow, this is like a bridge too far. There's so many auditors around the world. I'm expected to go out and do this, but it was a wonderful experience because I learned so much from those auditors that I was teaching from the book. I was teaching them what the books say about, ISO 19011 auditing, and learning for years and years and years doing that. Over time, I realized that the auditors in the classrooms were debating between the terms audit and evaluation, and I found that interesting. And as you dig into those words and what they mean, and now when we teach it at our safety leader training course, we do differentiate. An audit needs to follow the ISO 19011 audit principles, where you have a protocol, you have independence, you're making a judgment call on if the activity is meeting the criteria, and you leave that evidence and that finding with the operator, and you kind of walk away and say, you got to fix these things. It's up to you how to fix them. Where the evaluation, okay, put that aside. Where the evaluation is more liberal. It's allowing the experienced evaluator, not auditor, but it could be the same person, that probably is, they wear different hats, to have the conversation that's a little bit deeper, more qualitative. It's less and less black and white, but more and more of an exploration. It allows the evaluator to get more into the culture during the analysis and have that conversation and start into the coaching domain as soon as they see the opportunity, instead of waiting and at the end of maybe a 2-day event, 3-day event, or 2-hour event, of saying, okay, now I need to remember what the findings were so I can talk about some solutions. It makes it more natural. Let's have a conversation. I see this right now. Have you ever considered this? This would be a great way to approach this kind of issue, and just go have that natural conversation. So that's why the evaluation is better for the human endeavor, in my opinion. Audits have their place. They're definitely a professional thing to do. As Chris pointed out, I think everybody should do them at some time, periodically. But the evaluation is more that natural approach to continually improve. And that's why we tell operators, when you're doing the internal evaluations, consider it like a coaching event, an evaluator event, where you just have that flow of easy conversation. You still come up at the end with your information, your document, and next steps forward, but it's just a different approach. Again, on this side, the audit is very rigid, well-defined, and black and white, and have the certain principles that cannot be violated. The evaluation is more liberal, free-flowing, and natural. And thanks, Chris, for bringing up that Afghanistan audit. When I first came on board at WYVERN, that was underway, and I remember all the logistics that were going on. And that's just another thing that helps us look at, we do these audits worldwide to include that kind of audit. And I remember the auditors calling and asking me specifically, he goes, do we have to go on a combat mission, really? And it's like, I don't think you really need to go on a combat mission, but go on a training mission with them. And so that we worked out the difference there. And the point being with all that is we really strive to have that conversation and about gravitating towards reasonableness, and that's our promise.
Thanks for that, Sonnie. Good explanation on the differences there, and I encourage folks to take that to heart and understand the differences between those, and be less intimidated by some of that terminology, and just understand you're just trying to get better at what you do. And this is program, not this program, just any program that provides that added insight that can give you better information. One thing you brought up earlier, Sonnie, and it kind of piqued my interest, and I'd ask Mike to join me, maybe if he's still available to answer this one. And that is, when you signed up for this evaluation, and along with it, you got a human factors, a safety culture, these added elements that it isn't traditionally what you think of when you think of just a straight up SMS, hey, compliant with Part 5 or, ICAO. So did you learn anything insightful from that, Mike? Anything that you could share that you'd be willing to share with us from one of those two things?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I've come, I'm kind of fortunate because I did come from a large corporation, which actually had sort of the Six Sigma type training and all of that sort of constant corporate, attending seminars that the company put on, and interaction between different people within the organization. So I'm kind of fortunate, and I'm not, bragging, but, it's just something that I've always been involved with. And I just thought, we need to have, every operator out there. I think this is such a crucial, and now that the FAA is coming out and going to be mandating, people operate under an SMS. We've operated under our own SMS, for over 15 years now. We've always had one. Because of the clientele that we fly, the corporations that we fly, everyone's looking for that, that element of safety, the insurance requirements, everything. So it's just so vital. But yeah, learning from WYVERN has really, and we're just in the beginning stages of this now. And I'm really looking forward to getting my team on board, not only myself, but Craig. He's my aviation safety officer, who has a really extensive military background as well. So he comes from that culture. So we're really, looking forward to, getting everybody involved, not only from, the pilots, but right down to the mechanics, the guy that's sweeping the floor, the secretaries, everything. I think it plays a vital role for everybody, no matter what your position is in the company. And I just, it's such, it's so nice to have something, someone to bounce things off of, like a coach. Like you said, we think that we were doing things, great for within our own little SMS that we've had, but we're finding that there are some loopholes that we need some help with, and I think this is the the next step, really enhancing our safety.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Mike. Appreciate that. Let's move on. Let's talk SMICG. I'm going to go to Rick first on this one. So the HAI and WYVERN team got together, and we talked about, hey, this SMICG is the basis that has been used for some time with the WYVERN evaluation program. I've included links to Skybrary in the chat for those of you who are interested. You could link on that, or you can go to the WYVERN site, or you can go to rotor.org/SMS. Any one of those you can track down and get to this information. But the SMICG comes with a companion implementation guidance for each individual question, and it covers the gamut of SMS across the board from the international perspective. It was developed by the International Collaboration Group, but despite the fact that it has this implementation guidance, we got together with the WYVERN team and said, you know what? It might not be enough information. We probably need a little bit more of like, what the heck are they talking about here? What is the definition of success, compliance, conformance? Choose your term. So Rick, tell us about that exercise and how that, and what are your thoughts now? People are going to be a little bit more prepared to understand the checklist and your efforts to get us there. Got you muted there, Rick.
All right, you got to see my gums flapping for a little bit. Sorry about that. Yeah, great point, Chris. Yes, when we started looking at the SMICG and the protocols that are in there, we stepped back and Sonnie kind of helped lead, marshaled this along as far as encouraging, let's boil this down to like, what's the intent behind each one of these protocols. So we took that information and we developed a guide. And within the guide, we, really kind of just tried to like say in layman terms, this is the intent of this particular element. And we went through all of the elements and spelled those out so that, people that don't have a deep bench on understanding SMS and are, like maybe have a young safety officer, somebody that's been appointed into that position, and they're trying to, swim up upstream and figure this out as they go. We tried to really boil it down to like, here's what the spirit and intent of that compliance element is. And we went through every one of the elements and spelled it out that way. And we also provided links to supporting documentation as well, so that, like Sky Library and other, good resources for, more in-depth information. So we tried to create a tool that people could use to really, kind of do a little bit more of I'm kind of hesitant to say deep dive, because then it makes it sound like you're getting really granular, and people start kind of glazing over and get that deer in the headlights look. So it's more, if it's in your swim lane to be managing the SMS and developing the SMS, it's a guide to really help kind of walk you through that and help you succeed.
Perfect. All right, Sonnie, I'm going to need your help on this one. So we have the SMICG, stands for the Safety Management International Collaboration Group. About 17 participants got together, and somehow they found common ground and came up with this checklist for SMS. Yet, if you go to your average FSDO and say, hey, I got this thing done, it's compliant with Part 5, right? Or isn't it? Oh, and we got this new NPRM that's out there, and there's a few tweaks that we can see coming on the horizon. So how can somebody using this checklist through this evaluation program feel confident that they're going to be ready for any CAA regulator inspector that comes on board? How can they demonstrate that they're ready to go? Do we give them some tools to help them get that way?
Yes, we did, Chris. So, just picking up where Rick just left off there. So after that first couple of iterations of taking this SMICG information and creating that guide that Rick was talking about, that's more layman termed, more user friendly, we still ask ourselves a question. Well, for those who want to pursue the FAA's paradigm or framework, how big is that gap? And so we had Rick and some other folks too look at the gap, and we've received that information, and we're developing the next tool enhancement. So we have the checklist that the operator can use, that as they're completing the checklist, it'll show the degree to which they're conforming to the ICAO requirements through the SMICG tools. But then the other tab will show the degree to which they're conforming to the FAA compliance checklist as well. Now, under the current structure, if you were to do that today, there is a significant gap there. There's at least a 20% gap between the FAA's compliance checklist and the ICAO's checklist through the SMICG. But when you look at that gap, it's really a lot of the verbiage. The FAA might say, does this person have it in their job description? Does this specific person have it in their job description? Where the ICAO says, does everybody? And so even though this one says everybody, this one is a bit specific, and you don't want to make the assumption. And so that creates a partial gap. There are some things that are like actual no kidding gaps, where the FAA requests things or mandates things that are just kind of out of sync with the way ICAO see it. But still, the message here is, we're not talking about compliance here. We're talking about professional safety risk management. And using the current tools from the SMICG, you will be on that pathway to excellence in safety risk management. Now, if you wanted to point towards, if you haven't already, FAA compliance, you can still use the same checklist with the gap checklist that we've developed and are still in the process of finalizing. So you can say, okay, I'll run this short gap checklist here, difference checklist, and now both of those together, I have all the assurance I need at this moment to meet the FAA, compliance requirements. Now, we all know, well, those that delve into the FAA world, that they have a myriad of DCT checklists that may or may not apply depending on which FSDO. But we're not going to go there. That's not what this webinar is about. But the message is here: we are your team. We are here, and I'm talking about the partnership, HAI and WYVERN, and anybody else in the industry that wants to help you get on the pathway that you need to be for professional safety risk management.
Yeah, I'm glad you used that word, risk management. So I'll go to you, Chris. You've been on the bench a little while. We'll get back in the game. So, what do you think the risk for operators who are not actively implementing or maturing their SMS, from your point of view? What's their risk?
Well, it's not being aware of all the hazards and risk analysis and identifying those hazards. So if you don't have a mature system, if you're depending on emails and Dropbox, if you don't have an active system where you can query and then people can respond, and you can look at flight risk assessment tools. We've developed our own mission risk assessment tool that we hang on the portal that is used for ground risk assessments. So when people start a new mission, we expect them to fill it out. They can drop it onto the QSMS, and that goes out to the executive branch here, and everybody can review that. So I think the risk is if you are using an antiquated system or something that's not as fast as the speed of light as the QSMS is, I think you're probably you have the risk of missing some things. And again, we like it because it's available 24/7. If you have a phone, a tablet, or a computer, you can send in your frat or a report that immediately notifies the executives and myself, and then and that's 24/7. We can take immediate action if required. So I would think that's, if you want to grow your company, you're going to have to grow your safety management system.
All right. Anything to add on that, Mike?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, it's just having the tool. I went and invested. Bought. Can't tell you how many iPads to have on board the aircraft, and each pilot had one. I've invested that because it's so crucial to be able to do a frat and to do a risk assessment right then and there, instead of doing it on paper or looking at the weather or and then submitting it to the office the next day. I mean that doesn't work in our business. So having it web-based and having it immediate at that point, and then I being on the executive side, I get to see all of it, and we have the on-off times too, so it qualifies for our dispatch and also our weight and balance for the larger aircraft that are over 6,000 pounds. We have to do a weight and balance, and be able to do that. I mean, that's not a WYVERN thing, but we can circulate it through that same type of mechanism. But it's just so important to be able to have it readily available. And we a lot of times we operate in the Northeast up here, and if everyone's used to the Hamptons, we could take off out of New York City, fly to the Hamptons, drop people off, go back to the city, get another group, and come back out. And all of a sudden, it's fogged over. Well, it gives us the ability to sort of, instead of doing your frat for the entire, week, we're able to group the flights together and just do one frat for the entire day. If we know the entire day it's going to be clear blue, no threat of rain or fog or anything. But when you have a trip that can flip on you within 15 minutes, we have that risk assessment tool right in the cockpit with us, and we can go in and see what our score is. Fogging over, do we have to now file IFR to go in there? I mean, it's such a great tool.
Excellent. All right. Well, we got about 7 more minutes before we get to the top of the hour. I'd like to, let's talk turkey here, Sonnie. Somebody picks up the phone and calls us or sends in an inquiry today. What does the process look like? And maybe they don't know they want to do it, but let's just assume for a moment they're an HAI member operator, and they're members in good standing, and they just want to explore this. At what point, how far in the process can they go before they commit to expenditure of funds for this? How far can we take them on the coaching side of this before it becomes a full execution?
Well, I think that it really depends, but we're going to talk with anybody. I mean, we'll spend a number of hours with a client, we don't have a set time at Wyvern. I don't tell my people, none of my team members, to say, hey, if these people talk too much, you just tell them, if you want anything else, you're going to send a proposal. That's not how we operate. Now, sometimes my team have come to me and say, well, I'm talking to this guy in New Mexico, and I think I've been on the phone with him the last 3 weeks for at least 10 hours. Is that okay? I'm like, well, are you helping him? Because we're all about relationship. Our core value doesn't say make money. Our core value says relationships, innovation, and professionalism. And I think it's our job at Wyvern to serve the industry. And that means you stay on the phone with them until they have a relationship. Now, professionalism says that goes on both sides. You might have to remind that person on the other end that, we are a business. Would you like us to help you with something as a project? Because I think I've been helping you quite a bit here. And nobody's taken advantage. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of companies that do not have a mandate on PTO, time off. They just say, you know what, if you take time off, take time off. I'm not going to max you out. If you need it, take it. And that's what we do with our potential clients out there. It's like, they know when to stop talking, and they know when they're abusing the system, and they haven't really done it. That's a one-off. So there's really, it's just, we keep talking with them until we explain to them the value proposition, which is this: you won't find anything else out there in the industry that's better priced, more efficient, and more value packed than this HAI Wyvern SMS evaluation process. It's got everything you really need to understand where you are with regard to safety risk management. We look at the human factors. We look at the safety culture. In fact, we bring in tools from Flight Safety Foundation, the basic aviation risk. What's your risk of a mid-air collision? What's your risk of a ground collision? What's your risk of loss of control in flight? And we go through those 11 basic risks and ask them, the coach does, and this isn't one visit, this is over time. But these are the things we believe in. These are the tools we use. These are conversations we have. So yeah, I really don't have a good answer for you, Chris, other than that's our culture at Wyvern, and we just hang with you. We are your wingman. We're here for the relationship for the long haul. And we think that when we would do that one day when you really need somebody to help you in a business sense, you'll remember us. But that's not our core value. Our core value is the relationship of professionalism and innovation. We want to learn from. When we have the conversations, we actually learn. So, we understand there's a challenge out there in the industry that somebody's wrestling with.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with you, Sonnie. We got a question from Tom. It's not directly related to SMS, but maybe it comes into play in your answer. What questions should the flying public, the uninformed public, ask about an operator before they engage or use their services? Any key points for those who might be listening in who aren't actual operators, but might be just curious listening in?
I think a great question. I'm hoping I'm going to address it properly. Of course, from this conversation, you know what the answer is going to be in some regard. To ask the operator, do you have a safety management system? If so, can you tell me about it? If so, has it been validated by a third party? Tell me about your safety culture. How do you know what it is? How is it validated? Because I think we all agree on this call, without even asking, that you can have the system in place of an SMS, the structure, but it's not going to work without the culture. A culture allows the safety management efforts to really work the way they should. And it takes time sometimes. But, culture, and you want to know if they actually have the system in place and how they know that they have it validated to a third party.
Thanks for that, Sonnie. Appreciate it. So, gosh, I'll give Rick, I'm going to give you a shot. See if you can answer this, and Sonnie can bail you out if it's more his, get you in the game here. So you've worked with Wyvern, and they have what we call their QSMS, which is, has the word quality in there. So what would you say the difference between a quality system and a compliance system is in your view? And then Sonnie, you can, tighten up, any extra if you need to.
Yeah, I think the difference would be, particularly with Wyvern's tool, is it gives you a solid platform to collect your data and information. When we were talking about this earlier, it made me think of one of the presentations company I was with that we used to do at HEI when we taught ORM. And it was like, our mantra was, you don't know what you don't know. And the beauty of the QSMS program is it's a superb platform to capture data, and that data helps you develop knowledge of what's going on in your organization. You may think you have a solid idea because of just interaction with your pilots and your crew, but when you start providing them tools to be able to report, even just, close calls or, things that are of significant interest, where they think, hey, that's kind of a risky thing we're doing. I wonder, is management really, knowledgeable of that? And when you provide them a reporting process that enables them to use that, confidential reporting piece and get that information into the system, you create a data point. And then when you start to mine that data point, you'll also eventually start to see trends, particularly if it's one thing that's just hanging out there. And, those become your leading indicators. And that's, the beauty of a safety management system is it really starts once, it's a mature program and you have the right tools in place, it really starts helping you identify risk factors that you may not even be aware of, for senior management particularly.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for that. We have gotten to the top of the hour, 5 o'clock here on the East Coast. So I'm just acknowledging those people who did join us for this full hour. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. And some of you might have even been at the NTSB webinar before this. So you're about SMS'd out for the day. We appreciate your dedication, quest for knowledge. Also like to thank all of those folks who are with us on social media, particularly those on LinkedIn who joined us for live streaming today. Got a couple questions from those folks. Got a comment from Goran about evaluation. I'll just summarize, particularly with the training process, new technologies, new challenges, new tasks depend on improvement in training processes, plans, analysis, etc. Evaluation is very important to affirm that we are going in the right direction. A lot that kind of themes up with one of those, what keeps you up at night? What are you doing about it? And how do you know it's working? That kind of summarizes risk management in a quick nutshell. And using this tools like this, whether it be the software support tool or a third-party evaluation process, it's certainly going to help give you a better understanding of where you're at and where you need to go. So thank you very much for your time today. As I'd like to go around the horn one more time and ask you guys, if there's only one thing that you want people to remember from this particular webinar, what would you like that to be? Rick?
You've got to start somewhere, and growing an SMS is not an overnight evolution. It's a maturing process. And I think for senior management, you need to recognize that once you start a program like this and you give people an opportunity to report, don't be surprised by people reporting. That's good. It's not bad. It's good information. You'll learn from it.
That's really a good point. A lot of folks who implement a program and all of a sudden the floodgates come in and then they think that their program got less safe once they start opening the door for responses, and it scares them away and they want to shut it down. Please don't do that. Chris Vatt, what thoughts do you have to leave us with today?
To dovetail off of Rick, your system, no matter what it is, has to have input and output. If you don't have input from the field, you're just the safety officer's flapping his gums and not getting anywhere. So you got to involve the other employees. And if you do that, you're going to have a successful program.
Thank you for that, Chris. Mike, any closing thoughts that you would like to leave us with?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that. So I just, it's so important for people to understand that are either coming into an SMS for the first time or currently have one, is not to just be compliant. There's two, being compliant means, you might have a book on the shelf that you got to blow the dust off of every week just to see what's in it. I mean, compliant to say, oh yeah, we have that. Okay, it's procedural, but is it effective and is it operational? And the quality, hence QSMS with the WYVERN, it allows you the opportunity to definitely make sure that whatever you have as far as your SMS program that it's a quality manual and it actually enhances your operation.
Thank you for that, Mike. We did get one question. I'm just going to go ahead and answer it real quick on live before I go to you, Sonnie, to close things out. So just reiterating, somebody asked about a link to the SMICG SMS checklist. Those links are available in the webinar chat. If you poke around in here, we'll keep this webinar open for a little while. There are 3 different links that you can go to get those. And if all else fails, you can just go to WYVERN's homepage and link to their program, or HAI's rotor.org/SMS. And you can scroll down to the bottom right where there's Ask About Coaching and Assessment if you are specifically interested in that, or you can ask about any one of the providers that provide a software service. The difference between what's going to be in the Part 5 and what's in the SMICG, you can get that information once you engage with us on this particular coaching evaluation program, and we'll be happy to provide the differences in that checklist through those tabs that Sonnie was referring to. All right, Sonnie, thanks so much for joining us today and partnering with HAI with this and other services. Thanks for what you do for the industry. And then thanks to all of you who joined us today on the panel. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to learning more about your success in the future. Sonnie, closing thoughts, please.
Closing thoughts. Don't fly alone. Fly with a wingman. It's the best way to fly. And if you choose a wingman, choose one that'll be there. The principle of a wingman is your job is to be there. When the flight lead looks over and expects the wingman's there to always assist and help in any way. And that's the WYVERN way. That's our promise to you. We will be there. Doesn't cost you anything. And we look forward to going on the journey with you together. And with HAI, and I wish you the very best.
Thanks for that, Sonnie. Thanks, everybody. I'll bid you goodbye. I'll turn it back over to Dan, who just has a few housekeeping items, and send us on our way. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Sonnie. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Chris Matt, and thank you, Michael. Really appreciate your time and assistance this afternoon. Okay, let me get my screen shared here, and we will get back to wrapping things up. Save the dates. We have webinars coming up here soon. The next one coming up is May 25th. Towards the end of the month, our webinars are always the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of every month at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. On the 25th, we have DPE pet peeves, designated pilot examiner pet peeves. Any of you who are going through recurrency training, anything like that, or initial training, might want to find out what the DPE is thinking before you get into the cockpit with them. Randy Sharkey from Sweet Helicopters is going to join us to share his insights on that one. June 8th, we had scheduled, once again, a CEO to CEO webinar with Clyde Woltman of Leonardo and Jim Viola of HAI. Strangely enough, being a CEO means apparently you don't have time. You can't control your own schedule sometimes, and so once again we have to postpone this. We will be looking for a date that's open, hopefully this summer, to get that one rescheduled. In the meantime, strangely enough, I will be presenting a webinar on June 8th. And the last couple of years during Heli Expo, I've offered a short course that's part of Communications University, and we're calling it Crisis Communications, Be Prepared. Nobody wants to have a crisis, have an emergency, have an accident, have an incident where the media is going to come calling, but I can guarantee you have to be prepared for something like that. So please join us, and we will spend a little bit of time discussing what to say and what not to say following an accident. On June 22nd, we have Kylie Key from the FAA. She's going to be coming in and talking about how safe is your shop. And it's going to be an assessment for maintenance programs. It'll be actually really, really interesting. That was part of the vast global conference last autumn in Dallas. And so we know that it's something that will be of use to everybody. HAI does like to share information. A couple ways we do that is through Rotor Magazine and Rotor Daily. Rotor Daily is a daily news aggregator where we pull between 10 and 20 stories related to the vertical lift field so that you don't have to go searching for them. If you want to know what's in the news, we can bring that right to your desktop every business day. We send these out around noon Eastern time. And again, it's just a collection of the top daily news stories related to advanced air mobility, drones, and of course, helicopters. Anything that we think will be of interest to you, we get posted in there. Rotor Magazine is an award-winning quarterly publication produced by HAI. It has stories that are a lot more in-depth than you'll find in other places. And it is right now free to anybody who wants to subscribe. That may be changing. I'm not going to give away too much now. Soon, but the only thing we ask is right now that there's a stipend for mailing internationally. To go to subscribe to either one of those, please go to rotor.org/subscribe and we'll get the information from you there. We will be sending out a survey here shortly. We would ask your feedback, particularly of what you might like to see in upcoming webinars. If there's something you like or dislike, let us know about that. HAI is also a membership organization, so we want to know what you feel about HAI, what we could do better, what we're doing great right now, what you'd like to see us add to our program lineup. Maybe there's something that you'd like to see us do more of. Best way to do that is to send Jim Viola, our president and CEO, an email directly. I know that he's received a handful of those lately. Email address is president@rotor.org. Just send it to him and he will task staff with responding as needed. That does wrap up our webinar for today. We appreciate that you took time out of your busy schedule to join us. Until 2 weeks from now, we ask that you fly safe, you be safe, and we'll see you again very, very soon.